Hello everyone, welcome back to this, one of the most ambitious Kerbal Space Program 2 videos I've done in this game since it came out about 6 months ago. The reason for this is because, I guess, up until now I haven't been doing missions of that great a scale in this game because A, the performance is really bad, so it's really hard to get craft that work at a usable frame rate, and just the bugs and stuff make complicated missions very demoralizing to attempt when things inevitably go wrong or glitches prevent you from doing things. But, you know, we're 3 patches in and a couple of hot fixes as well. I mean, patch 4 may have come out by the time this video comes out. I'm recording this about a week before I intend to publish it, so maybe patch 4 is here, who knows. But despite the fact that patch 4 is not out yet, we've still got 3 patches and the aforementioned couple of hot fixes as well, so the game's a bit more stable than it was when it first came out. So when the game first released, I did a lot of kind of big-ish missions. I went to the Mohole, the Dres Canyon, I went to Eeloo, did all kinds of stuff, and those missions were played with a lot of bugs. Even my Mun missions, like a lot of Kraken attacks, things like that. But recently I've been kind of getting back into the game. I did a Mun mission that had very few bugs, and some of the bugs that I said were bugs, it actually was just me being inept, like the fact my lander ran out of electric charge and I didn't notice and said, the game has bugged. My bad, guys. Fully on me. Thank you to whoever commented. I can't remember your name, but I pinned your comment, so there. That's my statement there. But yeah, I did that, and I also did my Sun Station video, which was a fairly big craft, and it didn't have too much of a wobbly rocket problem ascending to orbit. So I thought now is maybe the time to try and do a KSP1 style video, as in, like, you know, slightly bigger ambitions. When I was playing KSP1, making lots of KSP1 videos, I was doing things like big single launch stations to like Lathe or, you know, Eeloo, things like that. But those sorts of craft would be very hard to do in KSP2 because of the performance, etc. But I thought, you know what? Maybe now is a time we can start seeing if these sorts of missions of this scale are doable in Kerbal Space Program 2. So that's what we're going to be doing in today's video. I haven't really talked about what's been going on screen because hopefully it's kind of been obvious. I'm constructing a space station, and we're not just going to send it to low Kerbin orbit, we're going to send it to Eeloo. One of the more difficult places to reach in this game. The station is going to be kitted out with lots of science labs. I'm doing like the air quotes thing because we've still not got science pieces in the game, so it's just got lots of passenger modules that are sort of stand-ins for science. We also have a lander that has just appeared. I built that earlier because I wanted to see how much delta V it had, and I wanted to just test that it could get on and off the surface of Eeloo, like had the right TWR, etc. So I built that, tested it, it works. I then just copy-pasted it into this craft file during the build. I didn't think you guys would need to see the build of the lander, especially. Sorry if you did and the video is now ruined. If it's not ruined for you though, why not consider dropping a like down below? Gotta ask for that, and also subscribe if you like KSP2 content. Yes, I forgot what I was really talking about now, but that's basically it. It's a big space station that's going to be in orbit of Eeloo. We have the lander, and we have a big fuel tank that can fully refuel the lander a total of 3 times. So I guess we have 4 landers worth of fuel in total, because the lander is going to be going up fully fueled. And the lander itself has like 3,000 meters per second of delta V. To get down to the surface of Eeloo takes about 650, and then it takes about 650 to get back up. So you can do multiple landings on one tank. The idea being that it doesn't just go straight down, straight back up. It kind of goes down, does a bit of exploring, because Eeloo is a really cool planet in KSP2. Not just literally, because it's very far from the sun, so it's cool, right? But also, it's just really interesting. It's no longer the flat, barren, dirty snowball that it was in Kerbal Space Program 1. It's got loads of big, deep canyons and gorges that really put the Dres Canyons to shame, in my opinion. Don't at me. So it's a really fun place to visit. So that's kind of why I wanted to put kind of lots of fuel in the lander so it could do lots of exploring. We also have the interplanetary transfer stage, you can see below, which consists of way too much delta V. That's on me, that was my fault. I was just kind of going off my memory of how much delta V is required for an Eeloo mission without gravity assists, which is about 8,000 meters per second of delta V. But obviously that includes returning to Kerbin, which this space station doesn't need to. So we actually have way more delta V than we need. And I don't even know if 8,000 actually is correct, because it feels like at the end of this mission I had loads of Delta V left over, so maybe my memory of 8,000 isn't even correct. Maybe there's a Mandela effect there going on. But there's the, ultimately the spacecraft is now constructed and it's all painted, looking very nice. Now we need to construct the monstrosity that's going to get it off the launch pad and into low Kerbal orbit. Yes, I'm still a bit too scared to do a mission like this in multiple launches. I just don't trust the rigidity of docking ports, because the rigidity of welded pieces in KSP2 is still not very good. So I don't really trust magnetically held parts together. I don't trust the docking ports, basically. Hopefully that changes as the updates roll around, but right now I'm still a little bit scared. So I kind of had to make things harder on myself to make things easier for myself later on by doing a single launch. It's not going to be an SSTO launch like I did with my Sun station though. I felt like the payload here was just a little bit too big to get it launched by a single stage to orbit vehicle. So there's going to be 2 stages. There's going to get it to low Kerbal orbit. I'm going to skip ahead here. I played around with a few different engine configurations to get the thrust weight ratio that I needed. So we're going to skip ahead away from the engine fitting for a bit and get to coloring the fuel tanks, which, you know, gotta be orange. I do like doing my big orange fuel tanks. Looks so satisfying. Maybe that's just, you know, the nostalgia of the space shuttle and now the SLS. But yeah, then we came to populating it with Kerbals. I wanted to add more Kerbals to the rocket, but the Kerbal manager was very, very, very laggy. As was the first launch attempt. It didn't go very well. The rocket fell over, the engines fell off. So I thought, let's try that again with some launch clamps. So we tried it again with some launch clamps, and it didn't take off. It had terrible thrust weight ratio. But it's a similar problem to what I had last time. And I think I had a sneaking suspicion, and this suspicion was shared by a lot of people in the comments as well, that if the engine bells are touching each other, they end up occluding each other and don't work. So when I spread the engines out and used some, 4 Mammoth engines per booster, worked really, really well. But then during this launch, I ended up with this problem where suddenly the craft entered this wild spin. And I don't know why it did that. And I couldn't really recover it from the spin. So I staged, tried to fly away, and ended up crashing into the debris. It was just a crazy last-ditch effort that to try and save the launch. So I didn't really know what to do, because that was definitely a bug, right? So I just decided to add loads more struts. Hopefully that will fix whatever was happening that caused the ship to spin out of control. Will it do that for the final mission launch? Who knows? Maybe you should stick around and watch the rest of the video, because there's going to be lots of twists and turns to come in this video. But first things first, we have to time warp round to an Eeloo transfer window, which, if you draw a line from Kerbal to the Sun to Eeloo, you're looking for about an angle of 101 degrees. I think I mistakenly said that was the Joule transfer window in a previous video. Apologies. Joule's transfer window is 97 degrees. So there's basically nothing in it, but I just want to, do a little correction there. Anyway, as you can see, we're on the launch pad. Our Kerbals are counting down. Let's see how this performs. Yeah, it was very laggy. So we're going to do that again, but I'm going to speed the footage up this time. Hopefully you can tell from the twitchiness of that camera pan just there how fast the footage has been played back. I think it's about 4 times faster than real-time speed at this point in the footage, but there are parts of this video where literally it's like 40 times faster than real-time speed. This whole mission took a very, very long time because the game was very, very slow. Most of the time I'm playing at less than 10 FPS. So it was a rough old ride. So again, if that's not worthy of a like, I've already asked for that, so I can't do that again. But, I'd love your condolences in the comments down below for my entire Saturday that was lost to try to do this mission. But yeah, I don't know if there was any point to that little... but I'm just saying, it was very, very slow, very, very laggy. So although this game's performance is light years ahead of where it was when it first launched, big craft like this, especially on like beefy computers like mine, my specs are in the description, it's still got a long ways to go. But yeah, it's quite fun watching the edited footage back. So I'm like, oh, that's what the launch looked like. I mean, first of all, I don't ever really look at my rockets anyway because I'm just hyper fixated on the nav ball, especially for something like this, which, spoiler alert guys, very unstable, not very aerodynamic, this craft. So I was having to constantly fight with the SAS. My fingers are just spamming WASD constantly, just to try and keep us on the prograde vector whilst also trying to get us on a nice, good gravity turn at sub 10 FPS. Pretty difficult overall. So I wasn't really looking at the rockets. It's quite fun just watching it back, saying like, oh, that's what the craft looked like during flight. And also it's quite fun watching it at high speed because it's like, yeah, maybe one day the game will actually run like this. Hopefully not like this. Yep. Once again, the craft entered an uncontrollable spin. And for the life of me, I can't figure out why. Because it's not like debris despawned on the pad, because I can still, well, it's just despawned now, the launch clamps, but nothing despawned or anything, no kind of change to the physics happened, so I'm not really sure what caused. It was a very sudden, very violent spin, so it's not like it suddenly lost aerodynamic, stability. So it's really weird. And then I spent the rest of the ascent trying to just force my apoapsis, into the vacuum of space. Because if we can just get out of the atmosphere, I can use time warp to kill the spin. The Mammoth engines, they've got gimbal. I've got some SAS reaction wheels on this craft as well. But no matter what, I just could not get it to stop spinning. And I couldn't get it to, visibly seem to slow down in spin as well. Although, that being said, I was playing at very low FPS. It was really hard to tell if the spin was changing pace at all. So literally what I'm doing is, what I did there actually, I tried doing a quick save and a quick load, see if that killed the spin, but it didn't. So what I was just doing is just watching it spin. Every time I started pointing vaguely prograde, I'd fire up the engines again, just to keep increasing my orbital velocity. And as you can see, our apoapsis is now 75 and rising, so we should in theory be able to save this. I knew from the get-go, there we are by the way, I killed the spin using time warp, so kind of cheaty, but also, it wasn't my fault that this happened. And I did kind of over-engineer the rocket. I didn't do any calculations, but I built something that I reckoned would be more than what was required, because I figured that something like this might happen on ascent, based on my general experiences playing Kerbal Space Program 2. But now, we got 2 kilometers per second of delta V remaining, only needing about 400 now, or less than that, 300 to circularize around Kerbin, so everything should now be fine. And there aren't that many major glitches now for a little while, so the mission will be plain sailing, especially for you guys where it's all kind of sped up, so way faster than real-time speed. This video is what? Just under 40 minutes long. I think the total amount of footage captured was looking at my project files, it looks to be just under 9 hours. So there you go. It was a long old slog to get this video recorded, but I'd do it for you guys. So there we are. And then we've detached those boosters and they got clear. I wanted to just get them clear so I could confirm that, yep, everything was fine. No flaws in the design, because I'm now just going to destroy them in the tracking station. Not because, I needed to, or that their presence would have made the mission impossible or anything like that. I just wanted to try and improve the performance of the game just for my own sanity and just to make the mission a bit easier, and hopefully reduce the risk of any unexpected Kraken attacks. That's why I deleted those boosters. But in theory, I didn't need to. That's why I waited for them to get clear of the craft so you guys could see, yep, they separated safely. Matt designed a good rocket. 10 out of 10. So there we are. Now I've just plotted my maneuver node that's going to get us all the way to Eeloo. I'm not going to do the burn all at once. I really overestimated how powerful the nerve engine was. It's the swerve engine, I think, that little cluster of engines back there. I overestimated how powerful they were. I'm like, oh yeah, it's really overpowered. It's much better than the nerve engine was in KSP1. We can do the burn all at once. As it turned out, that was not a viable plan. It took a long time to do just a small fraction of the burn, so I backpedaled and decided to split the burn in 3, much like I would have done back in day playing Kerbal Space Program 1. So we've just done the first burn there. The second burn we're going to get us to just between the Mun and Minimus. I used to make it go all the way out beyond Minimus's orbit, but really that's kind of not great because it adds a lot of extra time to the mission, which might interfere with your transfer window, for a saving of only about 100 meters per second of delta V. The further away your apoapsis is from Kerbin, the less delta V is required to increase it further. So I find the best sweet spot is probably between the Mun and Minimus if you're splitting up your interplanetary burns like this. Fun fact, the footage is currently playing back at around 22 times faster than real-time speed. I'm not using any physics time warp because I find that like with big craft with lots of parts, physics time warp just isn't accurate, and you end up like using far more delta V than you should to do your burns, or sometimes your velocity just doesn't change despite the fact you're doing an engine burn. I had this problem during my sun station video, so now for big complicated craft like this, I just do all the burns in real-time speed, so obviously that takes a while, so thank goodness I could speed the footage up for you guys. In the interim, don't worry, I wasn't just sat staring at the screen questioning my life's choices. I've been playing a bit of Sonic Advance. I played some Sonic Advance 3, then I played some Sonic Advance 1. I think, again, I touched on this in my Sun Station video, that this is what I used to do back in the day, playing early versions of KSP1 on a really, really badly spec'd laptop. We've come full circle, except now I've got a really powerful PC, so it just hurts that little bit more. But yeah, I've got a little modded Game Boy Advance. So it's the original Game Boy Advance, which a lot of people, it's their favorite because it's got really nice ergonomics, but the screen was terrible. It had no backlight or anything like that, so unless you had like a light shining directly on it, you couldn't see anything on the screen. It was such a weird flaw in the design. But then the Game Boy Advance SP came out, which was a front-lit screen. So it still wasn't great. But then another version of the Game Boy Advance SP came out that had a backlight, the Game Boy Advance SP AGS 101. And you can actually buy mod kits, so you can put the backlit AGS 101 screen in an original Game Boy Advance. Now, I am way too inept and don't trust myself to do that, so I just bought a pre-modded one on eBay, and yeah, I've been loving it. I put a rechargeable lithium-ion battery in it that's got a USB-C port as well, so it's dead modern, and I bought an R4 card as well with an SD card, so I can just put loads of games on it. I don't have to worry about hot swapping cartridges. I know, kind of piracy, right? But if you follow my second channel, you'll know I actually own an extensive physical collection of Game Boy Advance games. In fact, none of the games I've, like, air quotes, pirated, I actually own the physical copy of all of those games. I just like collecting stuff like that. But when I go traveling and stuff, I don't really want to be taking like 10 different GBA cartridges with me, so I have them preloaded. I feel like no guilt over this. A, because I own the physical media, and B, Nintendo don't sell GBA games anymore, so it's not like I'm even stealing from Daddy Nintendo. So in my eye, it's all good. And that's bit of a sidetrack, I know, but that's what I was doing while the game was either running really slowly or I was performing a big, long, extensive burn, etc. Just a little thing that I've been doing in my life. Just a little speed check. This little flip maneuver has been played back at 20 times faster than real-time speed. So, yeah, the game's still not running particularly well, despite the fact that all the big boosters from the initial rocket have all gone. I guess this is just a very complicated craft with lots and lots of parts. That big ring section has a lot of components, and there's loads of struts, obviously. So, yeah, the performance never really gets that great. I mean, we'll be doing an Eeloo landing. I don't know if that's a spoiler, but I feel like it'd be a bit disappointing for me to talk all this talk about I've put a lander on the ship that can, go down to the surface and explore the amazing surface of Eeloo. Trust me, guys, it's really cool, and then not actually do any of that. But yeah, we do go down to the surface of Eeloo and encounter a few bugs, but the performance does improve for that. So that's fun. That was a fun thing for me, at least, playing the game. This is one of the features I really like about KSP2 that is not in KSP1, and that is that the maneuver node does not assume that your burn is going to be instantaneous. So when you plot the maneuver node, you can actually get kind of a nice... You can plan your circularization around planets much more easily than you can in KSP1. So that was nice. I don't know if that made sense. I feel like just the footage explained what I was trying to explain, but just much better, because I don't think my explanation was particularly good. But I don't know how else to describe that. Maybe I should ask ChatGPT to write my scripts. Here we are now performing the last really big burn in this mission. That is circularizing around Eeloo. Yeah, it takes over 2 kilometers per second of delta V, despite the fact that Eeloo has, very low gravity well. And that's because we're starting to make a big change in velocity. Our orbit around the sun is vastly different to Eeloo's orbit around the sun. And to circularize around a planet or moon, what you're essentially doing is matching your orbit around the sun with said planet or moon's orbit around the sun, or in the case of moons, their orbit around their parent body. So if you think of it in those terms, Eeloo, and another example is Moho, requires a huge amount of delta V to circularize around, even though it itself has very low gravity. This people are probably going to mention in the comments that my Eeloo encounter was not very optimal, and I 100% agree with you. It was very laggy, the maneuver node maker, it was very slow. I knew I had an excess amount of Delta V, so I was just like, any Eeloo encounter is fine. We have the fuel to do it, baby. And there we are. We are now captured around Eeloo. We're obviously still in a very eccentric orbit, so we're going to have to warp down to periapsis and perform a retrograde burn. I was trying to think about what sort of orbital height I wanted. I kind of wanted to be fairly close to the surface of Eeloo, just, for that visual, spectacle. And ultimately, I have no intention of bringing the crew back home. So I wanted them to at least have a nice view of the planet that they're going to be stuck in orbit of forever. I guess I'm just a very benevolent overlord. That's all I can say about that, really. So I think the value I ended up with was about aiming for around 30 kilometers as my orbit's altitude. And there it is, the surface of Eeloo. You see those big gorges I talked about? I have done an Eeloo video before once in KSP2, so there's a fairly, I guess, good chance that you've seen that. But if you haven't, welcome to Eeloo, I suppose. Much better than it was in KSP1. Eeloo is definitely one of the best facelifts I've seen in KSP2. I'm trying to think if there are other places that I think have been improved significantly from KSP1. I mean, things like the Dres Canyons are better in KSP2 because now there's 3 of them, right? So 3 times better. But the planet itself is still like fairly boring, right? Val, Val, which is obviously based on Europa, has a subsurface oceans. That's very cool. But I don't know, I just think that Eeloo just has received, I guess because Eeloo was just so boring in KS1. The only thing it had going for it was the fact it was the furthest planet from the sun. So that was kind of its main hook. But now it's not only the furthest planet from the sun, but it's also one of the most interesting surfaces, in my opinion. Do you guys have a favorite planet or moon in KSP2? Let me know in the comments below. But that being said, I do think that basically every planet and moon in KSP2 is better than what it was in KSP1. Obviously things like, visuals, graphics, mods and stuff, yeah, there are things about the KSP1 versions that are better than KSP2's versions, but at their base, their base level, I do think that every planet and moon in KSP2 is better than it was in KSP1. With one exception. Do you guys want to take a guess about what I'm about to say? I'll give you a second to think about it. It's Minmus. I don't know, we might have got it right, and then it wasn't an it was a ding. I don't know. I mean, Minmus actually is great, but it's not minty anymore. It's grey, and that's not great. That was awful. But yeah, I just missed the mintiness of Minmus in KSP1. It was so, cute, Now it's all washed out and desaturated and bleh. I mean, I know it does technically have a blue tint to it because you can go in and bump up the saturation in Photoshop or something when you take a screenshot of it, and yes, there is a blue tinge to it, but it's way too washed out, and I don't know, it's not as fun now. Minmus was just such a cool place in KS1, that glistening minty surface. I really think, I really hope that Intercept Games at some point, there are more pressing things I think the devs need to focus on, you could say, with KSP2, but down the line, you just take that texture file, whack it in Photoshop, just open up the hue saturation gauge and just slide that bad boy to the right, just bump up the saturation. That would be beautiful. That's one of the things that's basically the biggest thing that they need to do. Forget everything else. Forget orbital decay. Forget wobbly rockets. Just bring back mint. Just bring back minty Minmus. Can we work on that hashtag? Come up with a good hashtag. Hashtag mintify Minmus. Hashtag mintify Minmus. We're going to get that trending on Twitter. It's going to go globally. Sorry, trending on X. It's going to go global because that's how influential this channel is. What did I even say? Mintify Minmus. That's what I really want for the next update. I do pick my moments to go on ridiculous tangents, don't I? Because now we have successfully delivered the station to its final orbit. I have now deorbited the interplanetary transfer stage, and Kraken having a little fiddle with the solar panel arms just there. They were started wobbling around a little bit, and actually they've come separated, and I couldn't fix that. I tried restarting the game and everything, and in fact, are they separated in the shot? Yeah, they kind of, yeah, they're not. That's now a thing. They're just gonna be like that now forever. But yeah, speaking of the solar panel arms, the solar panels themselves are still not deployed. Really hoped they would deploy as I said that just then. Oh well. Anyway, I guess the solar panels aren't really required for this space station, and in general, any mission that goes beyond kind of Juna or at a stretch Dres, at that point, solar panels are probably not the best choice for generating power because, you know, the further away you get from the sun, the less efficient solar panels are, and they generate a much smaller amount of electricity per given second. So they're really just there for show because it looks pretty cool, right? The main source of power, you've probably seen it, sort of above the orange fuel tank and that little command pod. We've got a gigantic RTG, which I don't think I've ever actually used before. I might have used it once, but I've just forgotten now. But we have a giant RTG that's going to generate this station's power. RTG obviously is a nuclear power source. Perseverance has one, as does Curiosity. They're on obviously a much smaller scale. Other spacecraft have them as well. I know people can say, oh yeah, but also New Horizons. Yes, I know. I just wanted to give some fun examples, you know, and and this lander has a smaller RTG as well, and that's it. We don't need to put another Kerbal on the lander because there was already a Kerbal on there. Jebediah apparently spent the entire interplanetary journey on the lander can. Sorry, Jeb, but he couldn't even like transfer to the main spacecraft because there's no walkway. Anyway, it's a drop in the ocean compared to the eternity he's now going to spend on the space station. So I don't feel that guilty about it. Anyway. We have now departed the space station on our very first surface mission, and also our last surface mission, at least in this timeline, for reasons that you're about to see. I didn't see this initially because I was aiming for that little sort of area where all of the gorges intersect with each other. I thought that'd be a cool place to go and visit. We can descend down to the bottom of those canyons where they all meet up and have a fun old time, and that actually ended up with a weird bug that I don't remember happening the last time I went to Eeloo. Maybe it did, but I was so wide-eyed with excitement because it was the first time I've been there. But look at the space station's orbit. As I was pulling my retrograde burn, it just somehow messed up the space station's orbit. And I didn't even notice at the time. So I guess I couldn't have made a corrective maneuver even if I wanted to because the space station has no engines anymore or means to power those engines. Well, I mean, I guess it has fuel reserves on it, but moot point because it doesn't have any engines. So I was like, oh heck, I'm going to just land, and hopefully I think this might have been the point where I noticed that something was amiss. So I was like, okay, right, I'm just going to go ahead and perform my landing. Hopefully I still have enough time once that's done to rescue the space station. I've installed the mod Lazy Orbit, because it makes testing craft much easier because you can just cheat stuff into orbit and test them out. That's how I designed this lander, by just building it in the spaceplane hangar, vehicle assembly building, sorry, and just cheating it to Eeloo, testing it and be like, yep, it works. We can consider that a simulation, and then we can go back and design the craft. But also for things like this, right, where the space station's orbit has now been messed up, and it wasn't my fault, and I don't really fancy trying to reload quick saves on the hope that it won't happen again. I will just use Lazy Orbit to restore the station's orbit free from any guilt. Now, this is kind of the weird bug that I encountered with my Eeloo landing, which is about to happen momentarily as we descend down. I always try and aim for a 0 meter per second touchdown speed if I can, just because it feels a bit more satisfying. And of course, I dab on the Apollo astronauts who didn't touch down at 0 meters per second. I know Neil Armstrong's landing was the softest of all of them, I think. Going off very vague memories now, so someone correct me in the comments below if I'm wrong. Yeah, disclaimer, everything I say in these commentaries is a work of fiction, you know, but I'm pretty sure his was the softest, but it still wasn't 0, so I always try and aim to be going exactly 0 meters per second upon touchdown. Anyway, we have now touched down. We can, I know I said I was going to talk about the bug that I encountered during my Eeloo landing, because it wasn't that obvious, but I guess I'll just have to talk about that in a second, whilst I address this bug. Thought I'd take the opportunity to grab some potential thumbnail screenshots just there, and then I just used Lazy Orbit to restore a 30-kilometer orbit. I know it's not the same, because we're now orbiting prograde rather than retrograde, which is actually beneficial to me, because it takes less delta V to reach orbit from the surface, but I just, you know, oh, there you go. There's my punishment, my hubris. One of the solar panels was like, I refuse to take part in this mission now that Matt is using cheats to correct his terrible orbit. But you know, I was like, it's the same altitude. Really, I've done the difficult part of this mission, so it doesn't matter. It's just in orbit now, it's fine. Now, this is the bug that I encountered during my Eeloo landing, is that we landed in a really shadowy spot. So I was like, okay, let's fly to a bit that's not in the shadows, so we can get a nice daylight shot of the Kerbals. But as it turns out, the shadow, it follows me. You know, like, because I tried time warping around. I tried time warping to a different time of day, but no matter what time of day it was, I was always in shadow. So I thought maybe I'm just in this weird little, there's like an overhang above me. So I tried flying somewhere else, and it was always in shadow. The shadow just follows the lander. So I was like, oh, that's a shame. I can't get a nice daylight shot of me at the bottom of the canyon. So let's just fly to the surface and plant a flag there instead. I'm guessing it might be a bug, but it might be an artistic thing that, yeah, the devs wanted you to, like, always be in shadow when adventuring down to the caverns of Eeloo, because I think the main kind of objective for Kerbal Space Program 2 was for it to not be a clone of KSP1, which is essentially what it is now but with less features, but to be a colony building game at its core. And colonies, they need resources to survive, so one could assume that there are some really valuable resources at the bottom of Eeloo's caverns, so you've got to like set up some sort of system to adventure down into the dark, dangerous depths of Eeloo. Set up like an automated sort of either a rover that can drive up and down the canyon or some sort of automated lander that can bring resources back and forth. That's just my thoughts, you know, maybe there's a dev watching that's going, oh yes, that's correct. Or they're like, oh yeah, that's a really good idea and we should pay Matt for that idea. Just saying, you know, got to get that out there. Tweet it at me. No, X it at me? What do we say now? It's just posts now, isn't it? Which doesn't really like post it to me. Write me a letter. Fax me my payment. I will post an invoice to you in the mail, not on Twitter, on X. It's such a stupid. It was such a stupid rebrand, wasn't it? Here we are planting our flag at Eeloo. One of the things that like annoys me more than it probably should about KSP2's flag planting system is that you can't put like punctuation in it. Well, you can't put an exclamation mark in it anyway. I always like putting a little exclamation mark at the end of my landings because it feels a bit more like happy, I suppose. But now it's just Eeloo. It just feels very like robotic. But yeah, just and you could put exclamation marks on your landing, on your flags in KSP1. I learned this from my mission I did last week for you guys, which was my back-to-back MUN missions. For me, it's only been a day. I filmed and edited that video yesterday for me, so I'm recording this commentary on the 26th of August. I recorded that video on the 25th of August. I'm really just like smashing out the video. I'm a real production house over here. So yeah. Here we are again with, I pretty much talked over my entire Eeloo landing, didn't I? But I hope you guys enjoyed that little flag plant session. Now we can get Jebediah and Valentina back into the lander can, and we can get them back to the space station. Or just to the new space station now, because we're kind of in an alternate timeline now. It's because the old station, I guess, crashed if nature were allowed to take its course. Kind of dark there. Anyway, let's get back to the space station and get Jebediah and Valentina back on board. Which there's still a few twists and turns in this video, guys. It was a somewhat challenging. Oh my goodness, the parts manager is so laggy. Like I edited like the freezes out, but during the initial launch, when I had to right click one of the parts to make sure I was definitely controlling from that part, literally the part manager took about 30 seconds to open, because obviously there were so many components on the craft. It's so... The part I said in last week's video again, that the parts manager has lots of things going for it that's really good, but it shouldn't be our only option, because if I want to right click a command pod to make sure I'm controlling from that command pod, I don't want to have to wait 30 seconds for the parts manager to eventually lag its way into existence. Yeah, it's just, it works really well in theory when you've got a 100-part craft, but maybe with a craft like this, it needs, you know, we need contextual menus, which I think modders they did fix, but then I looked at Space Dock recently and I couldn't see the mods. Maybe it doesn't work anymore, or maybe I'm just blind and missed it. Who knows? By the way, how's that for a little... I thought that was a pretty good separation for my encounter just there. That was my first try as well. I try and minimize the amount of quick loading I need to do, so I'm like, this is pretty close. I could probably get it closer if I try it again, but I don't really want to risk, you know, saving and then quick loading and then something disastrous happens. So let's just go with this. We got like 867 meters per second of delta V, which is like more than you need to begin the Eeloo takeoff from the surface all over again. So we have more than enough delta V to get back to the space station. Yes, it's not the delta V budget that was the problem for me getting to the station. We do manage to dock to it, but it was a real challenge. But I'm not going to say too much more. Don't want to spoil too much here. But now we're just doing my lazy rendezvous method that I do when I've got loads of delta V and I haven't got to be too you're concerned about the budget, and that's just continually burn towards target, get a bit closer, then burn retrograde, and then burn towards the target, and repeat as necessary until you got a nice close encounter, which actually I only needed to do one burn, and then we were visually very close. Where is it? There it is. Obviously now sans a solar panel, but otherwise largely intact. I forgot to turn off the orange colouring for some of those struts, so kind of a shame they stick out like that, but yeah, oh well. It'd be nice when we get robotics in KSP2, so I could make rotating space station rings again like I could in the first game. At the moment we'll have to just make do with static rings, but rings, they are still cool even if they don't spin, because ring structures, they look very science fiction-y, and that's a good enough reason to build ring stations, in my opinion. Now, and also I think rotating rings are going to become a thing very soon, in fact, aren't they? But as like one solid piece, because we've seen this ring piece in like developer previews and stuff, and the devs recently showed a picture of re-entry heating effects, and it was that ring piece again, so hopefully it's coming sooner rather than later. Who knows though. Now here, I didn't want to use the Lowne lazy method of docking because I don't like doing that with space stations, because that feels kind of unrealistic. I just wanted the lander to dock to a static station. But guys, like the footage is playing about 4 times faster than real-time speed. It was running so slowly, and the lander was turning really, really slowly. The SAS did not feel very powerful. So I quick saved and quick loaded, just in case I had that weird bug where SAS stops performing optimally, so you have to do a quick save and quick load to fix it. And as you can see, upon loading that quick save, I got, catapulted away from the space station. So I had to burn back towards it, and I was like, I could just spend the next couple of hours pulling my hair out. But as I said right at the beginning of this video, guys, I was already like 8 hours into the mission at this point, and I was like, you know what? I just want to dock to the space station. I feel like hopefully my entire back catalogue of Kerbal Space Program achievements is evidence enough to you guys that I am in fact capable. I'm good at this game, guys. Trust me. I am in fact capable of performing a docking, not using my lazy way. But at this point, I was at the end of my tether. I just wanted to dock. And we're not even at the end of the struggles of this mission. There is a couple more problems that you'll see. But that'll wait for another time. Not that much time left in the video for it to happen. So yeah, now I'm just doing the Lowne lazy method of docking for these 2 vehicles. So I literally just, in case you don't know how to do it, you take one craft, in this case, the entire space station, right-click the docking port you want to dock to and press Control from here. Then set the docking port of the other vehicle as your target and press Auto SAS hold target. Do the same thing again for the other vehicle, so I'm controlling from my docking port on the lander, and I've got the space station docking port set as my target, and then just burn towards it, and both vessels will just maintain alignment, easy docking, bing, bang, bish, bash, bosh. And there we are, it all docked safely, everything was fine, no problems whatsoever. Except there wasn't. I guess the Kraken saw my cheeky little, lazy way of docking and was displeased, and so dumped us on a suborbital trajectory. So now we're just hurtling back towards the surface of Eeloo. Just gonna fast forward to the moment of impact, because I know that's what you guys want to see. So yeah, a fitting end to this, a hopefully fairly fun to watch but fairly painful to pull off mission. I didn't want to just leave it there on that, sad note, so I reloaded a quick save to a point before I departed with the lander, so it's still stuck in its kind of pre-departure orientation. But there's the station there, and I set it to rotate so that the ring, is sort of serving as a gravity ring, right? But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the journey of this mission, and enjoyed seeing a big craft being flown somewhere in Kerbal Space Program 2, because it is very painful to do it yourself, since you can't speed it up whilst playing it. You can only speed it up in post, but I do it for you guys. I do like making these videos and watching them back, and I enjoy the fact that hopefully you guys get some enjoyment out of it as well. And of course, as a way of saying thank you to my Patrons and YouTube channel members who help support this content financially. It's their generous support that helps keep me motivated to keep making these videos for you all. Their names are on screen, as well as 2 videos from my channel that YouTube thinks you'll like. They're from my channel, right? So they must be good. But I hope you enjoyed this video. I do plan on trying to keep up with at least one KSP2 video a week cadence, or KSP1 video a week cadence. Haven't really decided on the exact ratio yet, but that's it. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.